Jake Murphy wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked his navigation screens one more time. His cargo ship, the Wanderer, was small and old, but it was his. He had been hauling supply containers between the outer colonies for 3 years now. The pay was not great, but it kept him flying. Today's route should have been simple: pick up medical supplies from Station 7 and deliver them to the mining colony on Terran 4. Nothing complicated, nothing dangerous. Then the shooting started. Jake's warning systems screamed as energy blasts lit up the space around him. 2 groups of ships were fighting each other, and he was right in the middle of their battle. He recognized the angular design of Xyrathi warships immediately. The other ships belonged to another alien race he did not know much about. "Not my fight, not my problem," Jake muttered to himself as he grabbed the controls. He pushed the throttle forward, trying to get away from the combat zone as fast as his old ship could move. The Wanderer shook as an explosion went off somewhere nearby. Jake's teeth rattled in his head. He could see debris floating past his window, pieces of destroyed ships spinning through the darkness of space. Come on," Jake said, urging his ship to go faster. His hands were shaking on the controls. That was when he saw it. A small pod was tumbling through space, damaged and leaking air. It was a Xyrathi escape pod. Jake could tell from the markings on its side. His first thought was to ignore it. The Xyrathi were enemies of humanity. Their empire and the human colonies had been at war for almost 5 years now. Everyone had lost someone in the fighting. But then his sensors picked up a life sign inside the pod. Just one. And it was weak. Jake's finger hovered over the throttle. He should keep going. Getting away from the battle was the smart choice. The safe choice. Whatever was in that pod was not his responsibility. The life sign grew weaker. "Damn it," Jake said through gritted teeth. He turned the Wanderer around and headed toward the pod. It took him 10 minutes to get close enough to grab the pod with his ship's magnetic grapple. Every second felt like an hour. Energy blasts kept flying through the space around him. One hit would destroy his small ship instantly. Finally, the pod locked onto his cargo bay door. Jake activated the airlock and pulled the pod inside. As soon as it was secure, he punched the throttle again and got the hell out of there. Once he was far enough away from the battle, Jake set the ship on autopilot and went back to the cargo bay. His heart was pounding. What if there was a Xyrathi soldier inside? What if they attacked him as soon as the pod opened? He grabbed a wrench from his tool rack. It was not much of a weapon, but it was better than nothing. Then he activated the emergency release on the pod. The door hissed open, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. It was a child. A Xyrathi child, small and fragile-looking, lay curled up inside the pod. She could not have been more than 7 or 8 years old if Jake was judging their age right. Her skin had the pale blue color all Xyrathi had. Her dark hair was matted with blood from a cut on her forehead. She was unconscious but still breathing. Jake dropped the wrench. All his fear disappeared in an instant. This was not an enemy soldier. This was a hurt kid who needed help. He carefully lifted her out of the pod. She was lighter than he expected. He carried her to his small medical bay and laid her on the examination table. His ship only had basic medical supplies meant for treating minor injuries during long trips, but it would have to be enough. Jake cleaned the wound on her forehead first. It looked worse than it actually was. Head wounds always bled a lot. He applied synthetic skin to seal it. Then he ran his medical scanner over her body to check for other injuries. She had a broken arm and 2 cracked ribs. There was also some internal bruising. Jake did what he could, setting the arm in a medical brace and giving her an injection for the pain and swelling. While he worked, he noticed a small data chip attached to the inside of the pod. He pulled it out and plugged it into his computer. Information scrolled across his screen in Xyrathi symbols. His translation program worked slowly to convert it to English. What he read made his blood run cold. The child's name was Lyra. She was the daughter of Commander Kessa, one of the highest-ranking military leaders in the Xyrathi Empire. She had been traveling with a diplomatic convoy when it was attacked. The pod had been launched during the battle to save her life. Jake sat down hard in his chair. He had just rescued the child of a Xyrathi commander, a very important commander. This was bigger than he had imagined. His mind raced through his options. He could contact human military authorities. They would love to have the daughter of a Xyrathi commander. She would be a valuable hostage. They might even give him a reward. But the thought made him feel sick to his stomach. He looked back at Lyra lying on the medical table. She looked so small and helpless. Her chest rose and fell with each breath. She was just a kid who had been caught in a war she did not start. Jake had grown up on a colony world where everyone helped each other. His parents had taught him that you did the right thing even when it was hard, even when it cost you something. He made his decision. He would find a way to return her to her people. It was the right thing to do. 3 days passed before Lyra woke up. Jake stayed close to the medical bay during that time, checking on her every few hours. He made sure she was comfortable and that her injuries were healing properly. On the morning of the 4th day, her eyes finally opened. She looked around the room with confusion and fear. When her gaze landed on Jake, she tried to sit up quickly. The movement made her wince in pain from her broken ribs. "Easy, easy," Jake said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "You're safe. I'm not going to hurt you." She spoke in Xyrathi, her voice high and frightened. Jake grabbed his portable translation device and turned it on. The small machine would speak his words in Xyrathi and translate her words back to English. "You were in an escape pod," Jake explained through the translator. "Your pod was damaged. I brought you onto my ship and fixed your injuries. Do you understand?" "I don't know," Jake admitted, "but I'm going to help you find her, I promise." He even found some old entertainment programs on his ship's computer that made her smile. At night, when she had trouble sleeping because of bad dreams about the attack, Jake sat beside her bed. He told her stories about Earth and sang old songs his mother used to sing to him. Even though the translation device made the songs sound strange, Lyra seemed comforted by them. Finally, Jake found a solution. There was a neutral trading station called Haven Point where both humans and Xyrathi sometimes stopped for supplies. It was considered safe territory where no fighting was allowed. Jake sent an encrypted message to Xyrathi space through the station's communication network. The message was simple. He had Commander Kessa's daughter. She was safe and unharmed. He would return her at Haven Point, no conditions, no payment required. 2 days later, he received a response. Commander Kessa would meet him at the station in 1 week. Jake used that week to make sure Lyra was as healthy as possible. Her cuts had healed well. Her ribs were still tender, but much better. The brace on her arm could not be removed yet, but she could move her fingers without pain. When they finally arrived at Haven Point, Jake felt his stomach twist with nerves. This could still go very wrong. The Xyrathi might think it was a trap. They might attack his ship before he could explain. He docked at the station and carried Lyra through the airlock. She held onto his hand tightly. The station was busy with traders and travelers from a dozen different species. Jake made his way to the agreed meeting point, a large observation deck that looked out at the stars. Commander Kessa was already there. She stood tall and imposing, wearing dark military armor that made her look even more intimidating. 2 Xyrathi soldiers flanked her on either side, their hands resting on their weapons. When Kessa saw Lyra, her expression changed completely. All the hardness in her face melted away. "Lyra," she called out. Lyra let go of Jake's hand and ran to her mother. Kessa dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around her daughter, holding her tight. Jake could see tears running down the commander's face as she checked Lyra over, touching her face and arms to make sure she was really there and really okay. After a long moment, Kessa stood up. Her expression became hard again as she looked at Jake. She spoke in Xyrathi, and Jake's translation device converted her words. "You are the human who sent the message. I found your daughter's escape pod floating in space. She was hurt, so I brought her aboard my ship and treated her injuries. I'm returning her to you now." "Nothing," Kessa repeated. She took a step closer to him. "You expect me to believe you saved my daughter and ask for nothing? No money, no political favors, no prisoner exchange. She needed help, that's all there is to it." Then Lyra tugged on her mother's arm and started speaking quickly in Xyrathi. She pointed at Jake several times. Kessa listened to her daughter, her expression becoming more and more surprised. When Lyra finished, Kessa looked at Jake with different eyes. "My daughter says you were kind to her. She says you sang her songs when she had nightmares. She says you told her stories and made her laugh. I just tried to help her feel better. Your ship is old and in need of repairs. You could not afford to waste these on a stranger." Finally, she spoke. "You have created a life debt. Do you understand what that means?" "There's no debt. I did what anyone should do." Commander Kessa had thanked him, even though she seemed confused by his refusal to accept any reward. That should have been the end of it. But 2 weeks later, Jake received a message that changed everything. He was hauling a load of mining equipment to a small colony when his communication system beeped. The message was marked as official Zyrathi military transmission. Jake's first instinct was to delete it. Nothing good could come from the Zyrathi military contacting him directly. But curiosity got the better of him. He opened the message. It was short and direct. Jake Murphy was ordered to report to Zyrathi Military Station 42 within 3 days. He was guaranteed safe passage. Failure to comply would result in serious consequences. Jake stared at the message in disbelief. They were ordering him into enemy territory. This had to be a trap. Maybe they had decided he knew too much about their military operations from the data in Lyra's escape pod. Maybe they wanted to silence him permanently. For 2 days, Jake tried to convince himself to ignore the message. He could just keep flying, stay in human space, and never look back. But something nagged at him. The message had promised safe passage. If they wanted to kill him, why bother with promises? And there was something else. A small part of him was curious about what Commander Kessa wanted. She had mentioned a life debt. Maybe this was about that. On the 3rd day, Jake made his decision. He set course for Zyrathi space. The journey took 16 hours. Jake spent most of that time second-guessing himself. Every few minutes, he almost turned the ship around. But he kept going. His parents had raised him to honor his word and face problems head-on, even when he was scared. When he reached the border of Zyrathi territory, 2 military escort ships appeared on his sensors. Jake's hands tightened on the controls. This was it. If they were going to attack, it would happen now. Instead, one of the ships sent him a message. Jake Murphy, you are cleared for entry. Follow us to Station 42. Do not deviate from the flight path. Any one of them could have destroyed his small cargo ship in seconds, but none of them fired. They simply watched as he passed. Station 42 was massive, easily 10 times the size of Haven Point. It was clearly a military station, covered with weapons arrays and docking bays for warships. Jake felt very small as his ship approached. He docked where the escort ships told him to. When he stepped out of his airlock, 4 Zyrathi soldiers were waiting. They were armed but did not point their weapons at him. "Come with us," one of them said through a translation device. They led him through the station's corridors. Jake saw Zyrathi military personnel everywhere, all of them stopping to stare at him. He was probably the first human most of them had ever seen in person. The attention made his skin crawl. Finally, they reached a set of large doors. The soldiers opened them and gestured for Jake to enter. Commander Kessa was waiting inside. She stood in what looked like a personal office, with star charts on the walls and a large desk in the center. She was not wearing her armor today. Instead, she wore a simpler military uniform. "Jake Murphy," she said, nodding to him. "Thank you for coming." Kessa walked over to a small table and poured 2 glasses of something that looked like water. She offered one to Jake. He hesitated, then took it. It tasted sweet, like fruit juice. "I have spent the last 2 weeks learning about you," Kessa said, sitting down in a chair and gesturing for Jake to do the same. "Your ship records, your history, your reputation among the trading stations." To his surprise, Kessa smiled slightly. "Perhaps, but I needed to understand who you are. What I learned confused me even more. Yet you risked your life to save my daughter and asked for nothing in return. This does not make sense to me. Not in war, not between enemies. You should have left her in the pod, or turned her over to your military for a reward. Those would have been the logical choices. You truly do not understand what you have done, do you? In Zyrathi culture, family is everything. The life of a child is sacred above all else. By saving Lyra, you have created a bond that cannot be broken. But I already told you, I don't want anything. I must repay this debt, and I have determined how I will do so. You will learn about our people, and I will learn more about yours. In time, I will determine the proper way to honor the debt you have created. You may move freely around the station. You will not be harmed, but you cannot leave until the debt is satisfied. Your ship will be maintained and kept safe, but you will stay here until I say otherwise. This is not negotiable." He had saved a child's life, and now he was being held because of it. "How long?" he asked quietly. "As long as it takes," Kessa replied. The first week on the Zyrathi station was the hardest. Jake felt completely out of place among the alien soldiers and crew members. Everyone stared at him wherever he went. Some looked at him with curiosity, others with suspicion, and a few with outright hostility. Commander Kessa had given him quarters that were surprisingly comfortable. The room was larger than his entire living space on the Wanderer. It had a bed, a sitting area, and even a window that looked out at the stars. But comfortable or not, it was still a cage. Jake spent most of his time alone in his room, trying to figure out how to escape this situation. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized he had no good options. He was deep in Xyrathi territory, surrounded by warships. Even if he could get to his ship, he would never make it out alive. On the 8th day, Lyra came to visit him. She knocked on his door shyly, accompanied by a Xyrathi soldier who stood guard in the hallway. When Jake opened the door, her face lit up with a smile. "Jake," she said, running inside and hugging him. She was wearing a small medical brace on her arm still, but otherwise looked completely healthy. "Hey, Lyra," Jake said, surprised by how happy he was to see a familiar face. "How are you feeling?" "The doctors say my arm will be completely healed soon. Mother wanted me to thank you again for taking care of me." She wanted to know about human cities, about the animals, about the food people ate. Jake answered as best as he could, enjoying her enthusiasm. "Why do humans have so many different languages?" Lyra asked. "We Xyrathi have only one language for everyone." "It is sometimes," Jake admitted, "but it also makes things interesting." She told him stories about her life on the Xyrathi homeworld. Through Lyra, Jake began to learn that the Xyrathi were nothing like the propaganda he had seen in human space. They were not mindless warriors who loved violence. They were people with families, hopes, and dreams just like humans. Commander Kessa also started spending time with Jake. At first, their conversations were formal and awkward. She would ask him questions about human culture and military tactics. Jake answered honestly, though he was careful not to reveal anything that might help in the war. But gradually, their talks became more personal. One evening, Kessa invited Jake to have dinner with her and Lyra in her private quarters. The food was strange to Jake, but not bad. Spicy and filled with flavors he had never tasted before. "Lyra tells me you have been teaching her about Earth animals," Kessa said as they ate. "She is particularly fascinated by something called a dog. They are loyal and friendly. Humans have kept them as companions for thousands of years." Kessa looked at him thoughtfully. "Perhaps you will. Why do you not hate us? We Xyrathi have killed many humans in this war. Your people have surely suffered losses. Yet you do not show anger or hatred toward me or my daughter. Life there was hard. We did not have much. But we survived because everyone helped each other. My parents taught me that people are just people, no matter where they come from or what they look like. But naive, perhaps. I lost my mate in the early years of this war. A human missile strike destroyed his ship. For a long time, I hated all humans. I wanted revenge. You, a human, risked everything to protect the most precious thing in my life. It has forced me to question everything I believed about your people. There are good people and bad people on both sides. Your people thought we were attacking unprovoked. Both sides reacted with fear and violence. But the truth is, this war has continued for years because neither side is willing to admit they might be wrong. Pride and fear keep the fighting going. We must see each other as people, not just enemies. In the afternoons, he would walk around the station, observing how the Xyrathi lived and worked. In the evenings, he often had dinner with Kessa and Lyra. He learned that Xyrathi society valued honor above everything else. They believed in protecting the weak and taking care of family. They had strict codes about truth and promises. In many ways, their values were not so different from what Jake's parents had taught him. Jake had been on the station for almost 2 months when the crisis happened. He was in his quarters reading a book about Xyrathi philosophy when the alarm systems started blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Soldiers ran past his door, shouting orders in Xyrathi. Jake's translation device could not keep up with all the rapid speech, but he caught enough words to understand something serious was happening. A human military ship had accidentally crossed into Xyrathi space. It was a patrol vessel that had gotten lost during a routine mission. Now it was surrounded by Xyrathi warships, and both sides had their weapons ready to fire. Jake found Commander Kessa in the command center, coordinating with her officers. Her face was tense with stress. When she saw Jake, she gestured for him to come closer. "This is bad," she said quietly. "The human ship claims they are lost and mean no harm, but my commanders do not believe them. They think it is a spy mission or the beginning of an attack. There are human forces nearby who will respond to a distress call." "Let me talk to them," Jake said suddenly. Kessa turned to him with surprise. "What?" "Why would you help us?" Kessa asked. "They are your people." "Do it." "This is Captain Ryan Parker of the patrol ship Guardian. Who are you, and why are you broadcasting from a Zyrathi station?" "They think you are spying or preparing an attack. If you don't leave immediately, they will open fire." "But the Zyrathi don't know that. They have lost too many ships to human attacks. They are scared and ready to defend themselves. But you have to move quickly before her superiors override her decision." "But I'm asking you to trust me. I have been living on this station for 2 months. I have got to know these people. They are not monsters. They are just trying to protect their territory the same as we would do. Captain, this war started because of fear and misunderstanding. Don't let it continue the same way. Take the peaceful option while you still can. We are powering down weapons and setting course out of Zyrathi space, transmitting our exit vector now. Escort them to the border and make sure they get out safely." When it was over, Kessa put her hand on Jake's shoulder. "You just prevented a battle that could have killed dozens of people on both sides, perhaps hundreds if it had escalated. Anyone could have done it." Her arm brace had finally been removed that morning. "Jake Murphy," Kessa said formally, "I have made my decision about the life debt. You are a bridge between our two peoples. You understand both humans and Zyrathi. You see past the fear and hatred that has driven this war. I am officially releasing you from the life debt. You are free to return to your ship and your life. But I hope you will not. You would work with both governments to facilitate communication and prevent incidents like today from escalating into violence. Someone both sides might actually listen to," Kessa explained. "The pay would be good, better than running cargo, and you would be doing something important, something that could actually help end this war." Then he looked at Kessa, who was watching him with respect in her eyes. 2 months ago, she had been his enemy. Now she was offering him a chance to make a real difference. "I accept," Jake said. Lyra jumped up and hugged him. Kessa smiled, a genuine warm smile that transformed her whole face. Over the following weeks, Jake began his new work. He helped establish communication protocols between human and Zyrathi forces. He mediated small disputes before they could grow into battles. He taught Zyrathi officers about human culture and human officers about Zyrathi customs. It was hard work, and progress was slow. The war did not end overnight. But for the first time in 5 years, people on both sides were actually talking to each other instead of just shooting. One evening, Jake sat with Kessa and Lyra, teaching the young girl about constellations as seen from Earth. Lyra listened with fascination, asking questions about each star and planet. "You know what the funny thing is?" Jake said to Kessa. "I spent years just trying to survive, hauling cargo from place to place. I thought that was all my life would ever be. Now I'm helping to build peace between 2 civilizations," Jake said with a slight laugh. "All because I couldn't leave a kid floating in space. That is all it took to change everything." Jake smiled and continued his story, while outside the window, human and Zyrathi ships passed each other peacefully for the first time in years. The war was not over, but a path toward peace had finally begun. And it had all started with one cargo pilot who chose kindness over fear. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. Sonnet 4.5. He protected the enemy's daughter. Now her mother won't let him leave.